Society has said it's absolutely scandalous that more hasn't been done to improve accessibility on Paris's underground trains network. The president of the International Paralympic Committee says he understands the frustration, but also points to massive investment in the city's buses. Meanwhile, one of Britain's most famous Paralympians, Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, has been in the news after she had to crawl off a train at London King's Cross Station because there were no staff to help her. Now, Liz Owen runs Access in St Neots, which aims to improve accessibility for disabled people. Liz, good morning.
Good morning.
And I understand that you are a big fan of the Paralympics. You went to London 2012.
I did indeed, yes. It was my first Paralympics I went to, and my first as a wheelchair user as well.
OK, and how was it in London?
It was actually a really good experience. The accessibility side of things was fairly well planned. There was a big build-up, I think, as well, for better access in London. And obviously they redeveloped the whole Olympic area, and they put a lot of thought into getting there, basically, which is always the biggest stumbling block, I think.
OK, so understandably, Rio in 2016, it's a bit far to go, it's a bit expensive. Tokyo was a COVID game, so almost impossible to travel as a fan. But Paris, just across the water, were you tempted?
I was tempted, actually. I love Paris. I've been there quite a few times before being a wheelchair user. But it was the access that put me off. It was just the thought of trying to navigate through Paris. I just thought no, because I'm aware how inaccessible Paris is in general for a wheelchair user, specifically the metro system. I mean, you know, our underground system in London isn't much better, but Paris is definitely worse. Yeah, and even with the Olympic Games, I know that they've said 100% of their buses are now fully accessible, which is amazing. And I think they said they're putting on accessible taxi transfers for people. But again, as with London, I don't know if that's just for the Games or whether they're going to carry that on after the Games to just generally make Paris more accessible. That would be nice if they did, because I might be more tempted to go, maybe.
Yeah, it feels disappointing that this kind of celebration of disability sport that is the Paralympics is inaccessible to people who, say, use wheelchairs or have other access requirements.
Definitely. I think with London, like they some of the things that they kept on, it did take them 10 years to finish the Elizabeth line, which now makes London, for me anyway, more accessible. But Paris, I think there's something like over 300 metro stations and only 29 of those are wheelchair accessible. But then that's saying they're accessible, but like with London, not all of them are actually fully accessible, whether the lifts are working or whether there's enough staff to get you on or off the train, like Dame Tanni experienced the other day. I've been left on trains before as well, so it's nothing new really, and it's a shame it's still happening because it shouldn't be at all. And Paris is a lovely place, but just a real shame that it's just still very inaccessible for any disability, particularly people using wheelchairs, because that's, the biggest stumbling block, I think.
I could hardly believe this story about Tanni Grey-Thompson that was in the news yesterday, where she had to essentially crawl off a train because there were no staff to help her off in her wheelchair. I think part of the reason I was so shocked is because I swear I've heard Tanni Grey-Thompson talking about this kind of thing over the years, and you would think it's 2024, surely we've got this licked by now.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, I've been left on the train twice and ended up, 3 or 4 stations past where I'm supposed to get off because there was no staff to get me off. And it's really scary.
I mean, that is hopeless, isn't it, Liz?
Yeah, you feel really, as it is, you feel quite vulnerable, but you feel even more so because there's no easy way to then alert staff, because most of our trains don't have guards anymore, and there's no way except pulling an emergency alarm, which you then you're going to get fined for, to tell them that you're stuck, and you end up somewhere you don't want to be, and there's no way of there's no number just to call, an emergency number. You have to call customer services and wait 10 minutes to get through to them, and by then you've passed yet another station. And I just shocked that someone like King's Cross, where Dame Tanny was stuck, is it's fully staffed most of the day and night, and they just forgot about her, which is absolutely awful. I think it's just but it doesn't surprise me, which is bad, because it still happens. I know loads of people every single day that say there's an issue, whether they can't get on the train or off the train, or there's no room for them on the train in their wheelchair, and it's awful.
So I wonder if awareness that this is still an issue for so many people is part of the problem. And I wonder what you think, Liz, about the question of whether a big event like the Paralympics, which throws disability into the spotlight, does it help push that programme of improvements, of improved access for people with mobility challenges?
Definitely. I think it's a shame that I don't like that the fact that Paralympics gets kind of pushed to the side a little bit in terms of things like coverage as well. Like the BBC obviously did all of the Olympics, and then Channel 4 have the Paralympics, and out of the last Paralympics in London, actually in 2012, you've got things like TV programmes specifically for disabilities and things like that. But I think that it's still very much the people that are most, I suppose, famous or popular out of it are, again, people who are wheelchair users, or they're athletes with blades. But people fail to realise that the Paralympics, there's 10 types of impairments, and although 8 of them are physical, one is a vision impairment, one's an intellectual impairment, and you don't hear of these athletes that are done really well, and that's where they fail to cover things like that, I think. And again, things go back to normal quite quickly. Once the Paralympics finish, whatever city it's in, kind of, might keep some of the access, but then it's, like I say, I don't know whether the Paris Olympics, whether the buses and the taxis will remain, or whether it will just go back to how it was before. And, that's an inaccessible place really to be.
Yeah, which just, I said it earlier, it seems like this massive dark irony that you are put off going to Paris as a sports fan because of access worries around the Paralympic Games. I mean, it's just daft, isn't it? Liz, thank you so much for coming on this morning and, opening the eyes of people who maybe don't have the same access challenges that you have. I really appreciate it. Liz Owen there, who runs Access in St Neots. They aim to improve accessibility for disabled people in St Neots and more widely in Cambridgeshire. So the Paralympics, in Liz's view, a force for good, but still lots of work to do by the sounds of things.